In this town, there's no off-season. The news never stops, and neither do we. It's always game day in Cleveland with Andy Baskin and Daryl Ryder.
It is always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. We are brought to you by our good friends at Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. He's Daryl. I'm Andy. Daryl, the big story, I think, as we move forward for the rest of the season is Jameis Winston, AFC Player of the Week, the Offensive Player of the Week today. So I don't know why I was surprised by that, but I shouldn't be when I go back and look at his numbers. But these are things that trend this team in the right direction, and I think it's good news for a season that has gone sideways, backwards, and anything but forwards until this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he's the first quarterback since Baker Mayfield week 7 of the 2020 season to win a Player of the Week award. 334 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in that win over the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, a very physical team under John Harbaugh. They're going to be playing this week another physical team under Jim Harbaugh in the Los Angeles Chargers, who don't give up a lot of points. So it's going to be interesting to see what the week one with Jameis to week 2 with Jameis is going to look like. One thing is for sure, the speeches will be impeccable. They will get everybody fired up. When we spoke with him on Wednesday, it was another Sermon on the Mount with Jameis Winston type of press availability. But, it was a strong debut and strong enough that, usually Kevin Stefanski does I'm not looking that far ahead or we're week to week. He had no hesitation when asked about Jameis Winston being the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. He said yes, with the caveat being that this is the NFL, stuff can happen, but the plan is that Jameis Winston will be the starting quarterback for the remainder of this season.
I thought Jameis, and by the way, Daryl, I'm going to do this really quick. I'm going to show you how tricky we get on these behind-the-scenes things. So I've got these Clorox wipes. I don't want people to have to look up my nose for a half hour, so I'm going to lift this up on my Clorox wipes as long as my power cord doesn't crush me. And look at that. You don't have to look up my nose for the rest of the hour. Daryl, let's go back to Jameis Winston, because I think that when Jameis was talking about Deshaun in particular today, he has clearly taken the high road on a lot of this stuff. It would be really easy for Jameis to say, you know what, not my business to talk about, but he has fully had Deshaun's back on a lot of things that we've been talking about as far as his future is concerned. Yeah. And I thought Jameis was really good at talking about that today.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a lot of conversation to be had right now about Deshaun's future as far as when it comes to this season, because no disrespect, but he's irrelevant now. He's out for the year. There's nothing really to evaluate at this point, right? You can't trade him. There's nothing you can do about it. We all know the situation. They're stuck with the contract. Obviously, Jameis or none of his teammates are going to say anything negative about Deshaun. But I will say this, Andy. I don't think it was a secret or a surprise that all of a sudden the offensive line looked better. All of a sudden the offense looked better. It looked competent. It was fun to watch. Like, I don't think that's by accident. And you go back to last year with the Joe Flacco stuff, and I know our listeners and Browns fans get tired of hearing me talking about Joe Flacco, but it was what it was. Like, you're talking about quarterbacks who could have played the rust card,
right?
Have rust, who did come out and just light it up and throw for 300 yards, right? Flacco did it 4 in his 5 starts. Winston right now is 1 for 1. Deshaun Watson is 0 for 19. This offense scored with Joe Flacco. This offense scored with Jameis Winston. This offense does not score with Deshaun Watson. So, you can I'll leave fans to draw their own conclusions. I know where I come out on things. I don't think Deshaun can play anymore. The results speak for themselves, and it is what it is. But I don't think that there's a lot that, can come from expending a lot of energy talking about or debating about what Watson's future with the Browns looks like right now when you're in the middle of a season. Yes, they're 2-6. This is a very big game The trade deadline is a week from Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. I think, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, but I kind of feel like Sunday's a big game. If they win,
I do too. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
You know, maybe Andrew
totally
Berry doesn't sell as much. If they lose, well, then the closeout sale begins, right?
Yeah. Let me just bring this up. I'll ask you the one question that just seems to be really relevant with Deshaun. And I think you alluded to this after the game. When I hear people talk about Deshaun's future, I hear people say he'll never play another down for the Browns again. I've heard that, or he shouldn't play for the Browns again, ever again. Not even should. I hear it with definitive talk. Like, he's done. We don't want to see it. Not that we don't want to see him anymore. It's just that he's probably taking his last snap for the Browns. Based on the contract, there's just no way I can say that with a conviction that I'm hearing some people use. Just respond to that.
Well, the Houston Texans in 2021 went with a 52-man roster.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, Andy, I think that's what's going to happen next year. I think the Browns will go with a 52-man roster. He will have full access for rehab and all that to the facility. And I think that they can just say to him, look, you do you. Whatever you want to do, we support. We're not putting you on the field. We're you know, you will be paid, and you will be paid what you're owed the next 2 years. But your days as a starting quarterback here are over. Now, if you would like to restructure the contract in a way that allows us to trade you, and again, that's assuming that anybody wants to trade Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Or I should say trade for Deshaun.
This feels kind of similar a little bit to what Houston was doing, right? Before we picked him up from Houston.
Correct. And make it, then sure, we can have that conversation, but let's be honest about it. No one's going to trade for Deshaun Watson. You know, I think teams will trade for Anthony Richardson this offseason. You know, trying to, you know.
Wait, I got to tap out. I'll be right back.
Oh.
Okay, I'm coming back, sir.
But
you should have heard Greg Williams talk about that. I'll just give you a really quick little story there. He came out and he's just like, he should be selling beer. Like, he shouldn't even be in this. If you get a chance and you want a good laugh, go back and listen to our Tuesday interview with Greg Williams, because Greg just absolutely crushed him. And what's crazy is, as he was saying it, as soon as the interview aired, that then we saw the story right away that he had been benched.
Yeah. But, you know, as far as Deshaun goes, I think that that's how they have to handle it. There's cap implications. There's voidable years on the back end of the contract that they use to lower cap numbers. So I'm going to say that it'll be a post June 1st cut in 2026. 52-man roster next year, post June 1 cut 2026, unless Deshaun, which he would be completely stupid to do,
right,
gives money back and says, let's just get out of this contract and I'll go, you know, similar to what happened with Houston.
Right.
Remember, he had just signed with the Texans. I think it was 5 years, 125. I could be off on that number. That's just off the top of my head.
Sure.
And then that contract just magically kind of just went away. And then the Browns 5-year 230 kicked in. They basically tore up the Texans. So unless he's going to do that again, he's not getting $46 million a year. He might get $4.6 million per year, but it depends if he really wants out of Cleveland that bad, or if he's just happy to take his money, sit back. And I'll be honest with you, I think if he does that, his NFL career is over, because then he will have played 19 games
since that'll be since 2020, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know that anybody's going to give him anything. So, but again, I think that those are conversations down the road. You know, and Jameis is, you know, and those that listened on Wednesday, Jameis really trying to keep the focus on Wednesday, trying to keep the focus on this week and trying to win this week and carry things over. And I think that that's where the Browns are as well. I mean, Kevin Stefanski was even asked about the trade deadline upcoming, and as we were talking about the importance of this weekend's game as far as the buy-sell thing, and he's like, hey, you know, yeah, Andrew and I may talk every day, but I'm not in the weeds with him. If there's something that I need to know, he'll let me know. Otherwise, you know, that's his department. My job's to coach the 53 guys that get put on the football field every week.
All right, I want to talk about Jameis, and I want to talk about the future. We'll do that when we come back. It's always game day in Cleveland. It is always game day in Cleveland, brought to you by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. Okay, Daryl, so we did talk about in the first segment a little bit about Deshaun and his contract and what might happen there. So here's my question for you about Jameis. What if Jameis looks great? I mean, he's still young enough that you might want to think about signing him to something long-term, more than just this season. If he can do something this year that makes you say, you know what, maybe this is a guy that can lead us into the future. And it might not even be deep into the future, but maybe enough to draft a quarterback, let him groom. Or, I mean, like we talked about it today, that if DTR could be the man, that would be the absolute best solution, because to get Deshaun back or to get Jameis back, you might be looking at a $15 to $20 million deal. Can you afford to do that while you're paying Deshaun and try to slide forward? Because you do know you'll be able to move some of the cap numbers around just because of getting Deshaun to take cash up front next year. But so your thoughts on more about Jameis being a long-term quarterback for the Browns, and fiscally, is that even possible?
Well, assuming Jameis plays at the level we saw him play against the Ravens, what I would do is I would do a Baker Mayfield style contract for him. Go, hey, 3 years, $100 million, but I'm only guaranteeing maybe $50 million of that, and you can hit the eject button after 2026. You know what I'm saying? Like, this way. Although
I think if the Browns really feel that, you probably, and I know you just threw 2026 out there, but Deshaun's still on until 2026,
right?
Unless they can get rid of it.
My point is this,
and it gives you a chance to draft a guy too, and still have Jameis be a mentor in some ways. If you want to do that,
I don't know if there's a guy to draft this year.
Well, I'm not even saying, but if with 2026, it's either this year or next year.
Yeah,
right?
But the early returns on this draft class are not very good.
No, I know, I've seen that. Yeah, I get it, but
so And as far as DTR goes, I think that there's some growth that still needs to happen there. So that's why, like, I am not in the camp of trade. The only way I trade Jameis Winston is if I'm getting a second round pick for the guy, which, let's be honest about it, and this isn't anything against Jameis, I just don't think you're getting a second round pick for him. So I would rather hang on to him, watch what he does the rest of the year. And then you can make, as you're talking about, the decision about, keeping him around, because I do feel like if he does play at this level the rest of the season, he can be the bridge quarterback. He can start here for a couple of years until you get out from underneath the Deshaun contract and you figure out, what the, the quarterback carousel, how that's going to spin going forward. But there's a lot of football that still has to be played, right? They got 9 more games. By my math, they have to go 8-1 over those 9 games.
And you have Kansas City coming up down the road too.
So. At worst, 7-2. But then that second loss has to be to an NFC opponent. You basically have to sweep and run the table in the AFC. This way, if you end up 9-8, you have tiebreakers to get in front of another, 9-8 team.
Right.
To me, 10-7 is the sweet spot to get into the playoffs. And we saw last year, like, 10-7 was not a guarantee that you're getting into the playoffs.
No.
I honestly don't feel like the playoff conversation is even applicable until they, like, rip off 4 straight wins and they get themselves back to 500.
Yeah.
Then we can start having that conversation. But until that happens, which, oh, by the way, looking at schedule, that's not until December. We can't start having that because that means they got to beat the Chargers, the Saints, and the Steelers and the Broncos. They
have to win November.
Yeah, they have to sweep the month of November. Okay, so again, Chargers, Saints, Steelers, Broncos have to sweep those games. That gets you back to 500. Then you can start having the conversation about potentially, making the playoffs. But then you go to Pittsburgh, home for the Chiefs, at Cincinnati, back home for the Dolphins, at Baltimore. And, oh, by the way, guess what starts next week?
Flex scheduling? I don't know what.
Filming for Hard Knocks.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Oh, man. Well, let me ask you this. You tell me the tone. Like, I had been told by folks that when Flacco was in that locker room last year, that it's the best locker room they had seen in decades.
I can confirm that.
Okay. And so does Jameis give this team that same kind of lift?
It's only been 1 week, but I do see some parallels.
I mean, players aren't going to rip. They're not ripping Deshaun. So, but you can tell just by renewed energy. I think I tell you, I walked out of the stadium on Sunday and I was renewed. I just kind of felt like, okay, maybe they don't make the playoffs this year, but I still think they have the talent on this team that doesn't crush all of my dreams. Most of my dreams were already crushed before last week.
It gives you a reason to still watch and pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not going to fall asleep during the game. It's going to be entertaining. We know the Jameis Winston experience, right?
Yeah.
He's going to throw as many touchdowns as he does interceptions. Let's be honest about that Ravens performance first.
Oh, he got lucky on 2 big plays against a defensive backfield that was beat up.
100%, right? He should have thrown at least 2, maybe 3 interceptions on Sunday. The Ravens couldn't catch the football. They had backups on the field. Good news, right? Mm-hmm. You look at this Chargers defense. They allow the fewest points in the NFL at just over 13 points per game. They don't give up a lot of yardage. It's a very good defensive front that they're going to face. They're a physical team. John Harbaugh's Ravens, Jim Harbaugh's Chargers. And a lot of guys that I spoke with Wednesday in the locker room said, yes, some different schemes in that. But when you look at both the Ravens and the Chargers, you see the Harbaugh influence in both of them. Kevin Stefanski mentioned that too, that, they're, 2 different minds but there are some parallels between those two and how they approach, how they play, how they scheme, and the physicality that they bring to the field. So this one is not going to be easy on Sunday. Like, let's not, start chalking up automatic victories. Now, Jameis Winston had a great quote. He always has great quotes. But I asked him about the Chargers' physical defense. And, he was very confident. He said, they got guys. They got Khalil Mack, right? Mm-hmm. But Joey Bosa. But I have some guys. I've got Nick Chubb. I've got Wyatt Teller. I've got Ethan Posick. I've got receivers. I got guys that can make plays for me. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I go into this respecting what the Chargers have, but also, too, I have confidence in the players I have. I mean, he was asked about DeJuan Jones at left tackle, and he said, I think he can be one of the best left tackles in the National Football League, which that's high praise. Now, part of that might be Jameis feeling the mood and things like that, but what have I told you in the past when I was critical of DeJuan? I was so hard on him because I see the talent.
Right. No, I get it.
And nothing frustrates me more when guys don't live up to the talent, right? That they don't show that on a consistent basis. But he played really well. Joel Bitonio's banged up, by the way, so that's not such great news.
Yeah, I was hoping they were going to say today they gave him a Veterans Day off, and he didn't. Although I did think it was weird that, and we can probably get into injuries now too, that he didn't say Denzel Ward was in concussion protocol. He just said he was day-to-day.
Well, he's in the protocol, though.
Okay, because normally he'll say he's in the protocol.
What it is he's in the protocol, and they're hoping he can clear the protocol by Saturday so he can play on Sunday. That's what they're hoping for. Okay. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. Remember, this is his 6th concussion now. They're not going to have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on Sunday. He will not play. Kevin Stefanski just ruled him out on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. No need to go day-to-day with him. He just is not going to play next week. But with Denzel, Greg Newsome mentioned on Wednesday too that, they're already down, one of the better linebackers in the league. They're probably, there's a concern they might lose, as he put it, the best cornerback in the league. And let's be honest about it. Denzel is having an all-pro / Pro Bowl caliber season right now.
Yeah, he is.
But I am concerned about the concussion totals. But what Kevin Stefanski, what Greg Newsome, what his teammates say, hey, we trust the medical professionals. We trust that Denzel's doing right by him, and the medical professionals are doing right by Denzel. Yes, he's a great player. We want him back. We need him back, but that's all out of our hands. So, sure. And Newsome even said, hey, the onus now is on me. I believe I have the talent to step up into that role and be successful, and it's on me if Denzel is not available to do just that. And I thought those comments were somewhat intriguing there coming from Greg on Wednesday, Andy.
All right, let's come back here in a moment. There was some Dome news earlier this week and some Berea news. So we'll talk about that coming up. It's always game day in Cleveland. It is always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I am Andy Baskin. Okay, so we did have some facility news this week. All kinds of facility news this week when it comes to the Browns. First, let's talk about the news of earlier in the week. And I'm just curious, your thoughts on the fact that Destination Cleveland leaked out pictures of what a dome would look like at Burke Lakefront Airport. Should they get rid of Burke Lakefront Airport? I will say that I thought it was interesting that when you looked at the overhead picture of the dome, it very much looked like a toilet seat. I'm just saying, okay? And I wasn't alone on that. We had a ton of people calling, tweeting, saying, "Hey, you know what? It kind of does look that way." what was the MO? Why was it worth it for those pictures to get leaked? Was it news? Help me understand how a Burke Lakefront stadium, which would take time, which they need to be in a new stadium by 29, or they need to figure out what they're doing with the old stadium. I don't think there's any other area there. And if they need a new stadium, they've got to go to a place where they really don't have to do any reconfiguration to the ground. So, Daryl, just explain to me where we are in this thing.
You're right. The renderings were pretty, toilet bowl lid and all.
Right.
But
they still didn't do anything to the lakefront in the renderings.
No, and you still can't get to it. Like that, they don't see. They're missing the point. And one of the biggest points that the Browns have been trying to make is you can't get to the existing stadium, and you can't get to Burke Lakefront Airport. Okay, and that's a problem. And then the second component becomes there's no development around it, and of course the pictures that Destination Cleveland or whoever leaked them. Anonymously. Can I explain how the anonymous leakage works?
Yeah, can you please help me with this? Because I'm confused.
There's no such thing as anonymous leakage. Here's what it is. Hey, here's some photos. Don't say where you got them from.
But we found out where they came from. So there was.
But I'm just saying, like that's how anonymous. Like that's.
I also don't see how it's good for Destination Cleveland or the Cleveland Sports Commission, because they're combined a little bit. That they even said in that statement that was in the one article on, where was that, Daryl? I forgot the one.
The NEO transport.
Yeah, that they said that they need to be neutral on this. Yes, they do need to be neutral because they're going to get a venue that's going to give them the opportunity to bid on a Super Bowl, to bid on bowl games, to bid on the combine, to bid on all of these things, to Taylor Swift, the stuff that we can't get in here.
Yeah, the last thing Destination Cleveland actually wants to have happen is a renovation to the existing stadium. Destination Cleveland should absolutely want a dome, whether it's in Brook Park, whether it's on the lakefront. So aside from the location element, the ingress, egress problems, which still are not solved if you go to Burke, there's a site restriction with Burke in that it currently is not available. The Haslams right now have the Brook Park site available to them. They've already paid $20 million in what I'm calling an option deposit, because if they intend on closing on that land by the end of the year, and that, goes toward the purchase price of that 176 acres. Burke land is not available. And then, the city of Cleveland then would have to get the airport closed, which you're at the mercy of the FAA approval on that. Okay.
Right.
Just because you want to close it tomorrow doesn't mean the FAA lets you close it tomorrow. There's a cash payout that would have to happen to do it. And that's about $10 million. If I read the study correctly, I believe it's like around $10 million. $9 million of that goes to the federal government and another $1 million goes to the state of Ohio to reimburse for airport upkeep grants that came from the feds and the state. And by the way, that's payable in cash. Like, you can't finance that. You have to cut a check. And based on what I hear coming out of Cleveland leadership, I don't think that they have $10 million laying around in their general fund right now to cut a check like that.
Oh, well, the county does, don't they? The county can do it because they want it downtown.
That's Cleveland's airport, though.
Well, the county better bail out the city then if they want the cash.
Well, there's another.
You know what I'm saying? Like some
of
the things that are being said, Daryl, just don't make any sense. And by the way, right, if you want to have an airport like Hopkins, you have to have an emergency runway somewhere. So now you're talking about probably, and we're just assuming it would be Cuyahoga County, right?
Well, there was like 6. I didn't even realize. I guess Medina has a county airport.
Yeah, every county has one, don't they?
There's Cuyahoga County. There's one in Lake County. So all those airports we're in the study of like, okay, here's who can handle what, and whatever, as far as the current traffic going in and out of Burke. But let's start with Burke, because there's an issue with the county that I got to get into as well.
Oh, let's hear this.
Well, hang on. So let's put a bow tie on Burke. Okay.
Okay.
So, whenever that land comes available, which could be as late as 2036, that pays $0.
Right.
Because that's when the timing on all the grants runs out. Okay.
Okay.
The expiration. So you could have to wait till 2036, which means you have to dump $120 million into the current stadium just to fix it up and keep it operating, because it's just, you got HVAC and just other, it's just maintenance that has to be done to the building. Right.
Right.
So if they were to start construction immediately at Burke in 2026, that's when the Browns want to break ground and begin the construction process. It's 2026.
Right.
So the building opens on time in 2029. Assuming 2026 price tag is $3.3 billion.
So it's $1 billion more out of the gate.
$900 million more than Brook Park.
Okay.
The Browns, sources that I have spoken with have told me the Browns are not putting in any more than $1.2 billion into the Dome project. They'll cover cost overruns related to the construction, but when it comes to that initial price tag, they're not going higher than $1.2 billion. So that means that's $900 million in public money that has to be added to do Burke. Here's the other problem. In Brook Park, the infrastructure is going to cost about $40 million to do around the complex.
The new roads and stuff.
Now, on the lakefront, it could be hundreds of millions and possibly up to $1 billion in infrastructure, because I'm including what they're going to do already, that it's going to be like $450 million. They call it the Lakefront Connector or whatever.
Right.
Well, that's like here. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's here. And then Burke Lakefront is over here.
Right.
Well, now you got to reconfigure all this area down by Burke too.
Right.
So that's more money. So the cost of this project is significantly more. So I love the politicians are saying, well, we're fighting for the taxpayer. We're fighting for Cleveland and the urban core, this, that, and the other. But the public cost is exponentially steeper to do Burke Lakefront Airport. So where are you going to get the money? Here's where the county comes in. Gateway has a major problem right now.
Oh.
The syntax, and credit to Signal Cleveland, they're the ones that reported on this. I don't go to the county council meetings and the city council meetings, but this came up in meetings that they cover. So they wrote about it and I read it. But Gateway, Cavaliers and Guardians, they're $40 million short of syntax coverage for expenses. So in other words, the syntax is short $40 million of expenses for maintenance, upkeep, renovations, etc. So the city of Cleveland and the county are now on the hook for $40 million.
But let me just make sure, I want to make sure I read this right. They knew that because when they did the renovations, the Cavs and the Guardians fronted them the money. And so that the city said, okay, we'll pay you back on this.
Correct.
Right?
And, they're doing little things at the ballpark right now to save money. I read one story where they found a way to save $1 million on the first floor of the executive office building where the Guardians team shop goes.
Okay.
They're finding ways to nickel and dime the project down a little bit to make it cost effective.
Right.
The expenses are what the expenses are. The lease that was signed, they have to honor it, right, to keep the Guardians in the ballpark. And so phase 2 renovations are underway. The dugout suites have already been torn out, and they're working on the reconfiguration of home plate, which, by the way, is going to look a lot like Dodger Stadium, just to give fans a little idea what they're doing behind home plate.
Right.
The seat replacement's going to continue. The Terrace Club, that is going to be completed and opened up. The entire service level under the ballpark is being gutted and rebuilt. New clubhouses, new player spaces, new treatment facilities, state-of-the-art stuff, right? That, when the ballpark opened, it was state-of-the-art. But it's been open for 30 years. And so now it needs, all that stuff has to be updated. I mean, look, I've gone down there and I've seen guys, the massage therapy room literally is a closet. Like that is not an exaggeration.
Because when they built the ballpark, they didn't really have it in there, so they had to come up with something. Yeah.
Correct. And
the old weight room is now the media room.
Right. And it reminds me of the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium, right? I mean, this is what they did at the old stadium too. So, so these are things. So the county already now has to come up for $20 million. And the city has to come up with 20 or however they're going to divide it, but it's $40 million total. Now think about this. And this is the rub with the Browns plan in Brook Park is that the Browns are pitching that they would like the complex, that 176 acre complex with the development and the dome and the parking, that the taxes generated. So that's parking tax, that's admissions tax, that's sales tax. Okay. And similar things apply to Gateway. I know the Cavaliers, taxes generated by that arena go back to paying down the bonds for the most recent renovation. The Browns want to do the same, do a similar thing out there. But this is where the question has to be asked. And the Browns haven't answered it yet. And the Gateway situation brought this to the forefront. Okay. The plan sounds great. The taxes at that 176 acres, the Browns aren't asking for an additional taxpayer-funded revenue stream, right? They're not saying we want we want an increase in the sales tax, or we want an increase in this tax or that tax. They're just saying the taxes generated by this complex, those will pay for the bonds to build the complex over 30 years. So there's two things. One, are the taxes generated? Obviously, the Browns crunch their numbers by, I'm guessing 80 to 100% capacity. Well, I don't know if there's going to be a guarantee you're going to have 80 to 100% capacity for all 30 years. So are you going to generate the tax numbers you say you are? Because right now, the sin tax is not covering the gate. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, it totally makes sense.
The taxes being generated at Gateway, they're $40 million short. And this is the other part too. Okay, so now construction of the building is $2.4 billion. What's the maintenance and upkeep of that building over the 30 years? What's the capital repairs? And I've been told the Browns are working on that right now so that these problems don't arise. So if they can get this dome built, they're going to have built in a capital repair budget, but we're not going to have these issues, right? Where you're having
that makes sense.
And move things around, right? Because like when the Cavaliers did the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse renovation, I forget the specific tax. I apologize, but there was a portion of a tax that got redirected to the arena, a percentage of it, not the whole thing, but just a little percentage of it. And then so like there are components here. You know what I mean? Like
no, I totally see everything you're talking about. And things that have been thought about already, but yet politicians want to play games and start and just put those renderings out when we already know what's in the
and then too is I don't feel like that they've been completely genuine in the negotiations with the Browns. I think one thing is said behind closed doors, and then they go in front of the cameras and microphones and say the exact opposite. The Browns have tried to do this without pointing fingers at anybody. They're not blaming Mayor Bibb. They're not blaming Cleveland City Council. They understand the economics and where the city is and the challenges that Cleveland has with the school district and safety services and other things that the city is, programs that the city is responsible for.
Sure.
The Browns have tried to do this in a very as respectful of a way as you can. And look, I realized that they had to file that lawsuit last week in U.S. District Court to get the Modell law clarified,
right?
Because the law is very ambiguous. They are honoring the lease in full,
right?
No taxpayer money for that stadium will be used after the expiration of the lease,
right?
So they're saying, I don't know how this law can get invoked and force us to re-sign. That's unconstitutional. Like you can't force a team to sign a lease.
When are we expecting a verdict on that?
That have no idea. Court systems are funny. We could get a ruling tomorrow. We could get a ruling in 3 months. But the Browns wanted to preempt the city of Cleveland from
dragging this thing out.
Taking them to court over the same exact thing, but doing it 3-4 months down the line. And then what the city of Cleveland does is jam up the Browns because the Browns are on a timetable.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, it makes sense.
They want to break ground on time. Wherever they end up, they want to have the building, whether it's the existing stadium, Brook Park, Burke, that whatever happens needs to be completed by August of 2029, no matter what. And so and to the Browns' credit too, the reason they're so
adamant.
Yeah, they got the foot on the gas when it comes to Brook Park.
Right.
Is because they're trying to lock in the budget.
Oh, it makes sense. I get it.
They want the budget locked in. These are the hard costs. This is what it's going to cost. Of course, every project's going to have cost overruns, but what they don't want to have happen is it's another $1 billion in cost overruns, like happened in actually it was, I think, $2 billion in cost overruns for SoFi out in Inglewood, California. So the Browns have tried to go about this the right way. There's a lot of political theater being involved. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, involved. But and then on top of it, the Browns are doing the Berea project, and we finally got to see what that looks like.
Yeah, that was very cool. If you want to check that out, make sure you go look at Daryl stuff at 923thefan.com. Daryl, thank you very much. Let's do this again post game on Sunday as we talk about Browns and Chargers for our producer Evan O'Brien. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. It's always game day in Cleveland.